Cordyline fruticosa rubra, tea plant. Mother plant. First I choose healthy and strong stem before making any cutting. Then I make a cut at 15 cm from plant base. After that, I divide Cordyline fruticosa stem into small cutting about 20 cm each. I plant Cordyline fruticosa rubra cutting about 8 cm deep. I make sure the soil is moist before planting my Cordyline fruticosa cutting. By doing this, it makes easier to stick Cordyline fruticosa stem to the soil. I am using plastic bag as humidity dome. You can also use any temporarily enclosure to make humidity dome. Or you can use shop-bought propagators or polypropagator. This is being done to retain a high humidity environment for rooting process. It also to minimize transpiration in Cordyline fruticosa stem. Leaf bud emerging. The other reason for using propagators or polypropagator is to minimize fluctuating low-high temperatures. Since propagators usually come with heat mat or heat cables to maintain consistent temperatures. It seems all Cordyline fruticosa cutting successfully forming new leaf bud. For me, to successfully propagate Cordyline, I just need to maintain consistent humidity level. Since my living climate temperature doesn't fluctuate very much, it's easier to propagate Cordyline fruticosa cutting. I don't use any rooting hormone. Some say rooting hormone are essential elements to ensure successful rooting. For this video, I do not use any rooting hormone for propagating my Cordyline fruticosa. You can use rooting hormone if you want, and please follow the instruction carefully before using it. Relocate my plant to new location. New leaf emerging. It's pouring heavily today, and it's finally stopping. In my climate, it's currently rainy season. My rain season for my climate begin from November to February, and has heavier rainfall. When using plastic bag as humidity dome, I remove them at day 15. For me, it take Cordyline fruticosa about 2 weeks from first bud leaf to full leaf. At this plant stage, I put my container at semi-shade location. Direct sunlight may cause overheating to the Cordyline fruticosa cutting. It seems all Cordyline fruticosa stem are successful in producing root. Sometimes not all stem cutting have successful propagation. It is normal to have some cutting fail to propagate. The telltale signs Cordyline fruticosa propagation have failed, by looking at the stem turn to brown, dry out, without producing any new growth. Usually for me, Cordyline fruticosa take about 28 to 30 days to produce root. If past 30 days, you don't see any growth on your stem, just pull out the cutting from the soil, and take a look any sign of rotting. You need the soil in moist condition and not soggy to prevent root rot. This why for me, maintaining consistent soil moisture, light and humidity are essential elements to ensure successful rooting. Growing media I use for Cordyline fruticosa propagation contain cocoa peat, red burn soil, micro, fine sand, old humus and charcoal. To propagate Cordyline fruticosa, you also can use perlite or vermiculite, or sphagnum moss, or coconut husk, whatever growing media available to your convenience. Just make sure that your growing media are sterilized and clean. Also, when choosing your growing media, please make sure not using waterlogged soil like heavy clay. By choosing sterilized and clean growing media will prevent new cutting from becoming infected from disease-causing pathogens. Container size I use for growing Cordyline fruticosa, height 20 cm, width 30 cm. You also can grow Cordyline fruticosa in bigger container than mine. Generally, the bigger the container, the bigger root system will develop and will resulting bigger plant. Or you can use small container, and transfer when they grow bigger. But remember, every time we transplant Cordyline fruticosa to new container, we're risking to have transplant shock to the plant. Some of the signs Cordyline fruticosa transplant shock include wilting leaves, leaf curling, yellowing leaves, and leaf rolling. The reasons that Cordyline fruticosa may have transplant shock is because injured root system and improper planting repotting techniques. When transplant shock occurs, it can resulting in the reduction and slowing of the plant growth. For me, transplant shock rarely occur when I'm transplanting Cordyline fruticosa to new pot. From my experience, if transplant shock happened to my Cordyline fruticosa, it only lasts about 7 to 10 days. For me, the advantage for growing in container is gives me more control over sunlight, moisture and temperature. When planting Cordyline fruticosa in container, please make sure it have good drainage. Brown grasshopper is considered garden pests by many gardeners. Since grasshopper are herbivores, they feed on the leaves and stems of plants. The symptom of grasshopper damage is ragged and chewed holes in the leaves. For me, I control my grasshopper problem by encourage insect-eating birds to come to my home garden. Container without, and bad drainage hole, and will promote waterlogged resulting root rot. Before I make a cutting, I sanitize my scissor. By doing this, I try to prevent new cutting from becoming infected from disease-causing pathogens. I sterilize my scissor using rubbing alcohol. I use 70% concentration isopropyl alcohol. According to the Center for Disease Control, isopropyl alcohol in concentrations of 70% or more will disinfect surfaces for bacteria, fungi, and viruses. I use rubbing alcohol by wiping my scissor blade before making any cutting. I repeat this process every time before I make a new cutting from new plant. When using rubbing alcohol, please do not dilute it with water. Because dilute isopropyl alcohol will make the concentrations go down. This will resulting lower effectiveness against bacteria, fungi and viruses. Alcohol is highly flammable, so please take precautions. You also can use chlorine bleach to disinfect your tools. For using bleach, we can make 10% solution, which means 1 part bleach and 9 part water. I don't recommend using bleach for pruning and cutting tools that require a sharp edge, since bleach is known to be corrosive to metals. Please dispose of bleach safely after using it. Please don't pour bleach in your garden, as it can harm plants and beneficial soil organisms. For Cordyline fruticosa rubra propagation, when cutting stem to smaller pieces I make sure there are several nodes, preferably 4 to 6 nodes, in each cut section. For me, preferred diameter stem size for Cordyline fruticosa rubra propagation is about 2 cm, 20 mm. Simply put, same size to crayon diameter. Cordyline fruticosa cutting also can be propagate using water. On average, propagation using water take me about 21 days before they produce root. I prefer using soil rather than water to propagate Cordyline fruticosa rubra. Because for me, Cordyline fruticosa rubra have a higher chances to rooting using soil rather than water. You can choose whatever method to suit your needs when propagating Cordyline fruticosa. During unrooted cutting stage, Cordyline fruticosa cutting require water to prevent desiccation. Water is important, since it needed for processes such as photosynthesis. Photosynthesis influence root development and growth. As we all know, plants cannot grow or survive without photosynthesis. One of the key to success propagation is to minimize transpiration until root formation. That is why we need propagators, Polypropagatura humidity dome at unrooted cutting stages. From my observation, at age 4 to 5 months, Cordyline fruticosa rubra can withstand mild to moderate drought. Cordyline fruticosa rubra prefers to be watered rather stay in bone-dried soil condition. When Cordyline fruticosa rubra in humidity dome, I only water the plant if the top soil become a little bit dry, which rarely happen in my climate. It seems some of the leaf tip are turned to brown colors. Left side Cordyline fruticosa leaf is wilting. Right side Cordyline fruticosa leaf show brown spot on leaf. Middle Cordyline fruticosa show sign of leaf wilting too. Back right side Cordyline fruticosa plant also affected with leaf wilting. It seem all my Cordyline fruticosa is affected with leaf wilting. I suspected it is from root damage. Since this week, my climate have daily heavy rain. It getting worse now. I hope my Cordyline fruticosa not dying because of this. From my experience, Cordyline fruticosa is one the hardest plant to kill. As you can see, it raining again today. On day 103, I decide to move my Cordyline fruticosa to full sun location. I hope by relocate my Cordyline fruticosa to dry place will slow down root damage and damping off damage. Damping off is a horticultural disease caused by pathogenic microorganisms. Raining again earlier today. I hope my Cordyline fruticosa recover from root damage. Also I hope my Cordyline fruticosa can get out from this damping off situation. More leaves start to wilt. I guess it had to get worse before it gets better. I blame this happen to the constant heavy raining and thunderstorm. Even though I can prevent this by simply relocation my container to cover area. It seem my Cordyline fruticosa have new leaf development. It's a good sign, that my Cordyline fruticosa will recover from this. You also can save Cordyline fruticosa from root rot by repotting to new soil and container. You do this in early stages of root rot, when you see unsually browning leaf. Since my plant's showing recovery, I don't think that I need to repotting my Cordyline fruticosa for now. Raining for a billion time. For me, ideal soil temperatures for Propagate Cordyline fruticosa is between 22 to 32 degrees Celsius. For me, ideal soil temperatures for growing Cordyline fruticosa is between 68 and 91.4 degrees Fahrenheit, 20 to 33 degrees Celsius. Cordyline fruticosa can handle a brief chill down to 30 degrees Fahrenheit, -1 degree Celsius. Ideal humidity for Cordyline fruticosa propagation is at 90% minimum. It is important for first few days you need to maintain humidity at maximum level. My average humidity when trying to propagate Cordyline fruticosa is around 87%. In cases where humidity levels are high and temperatures are low, Cordyline fruticosa cutting will be affected to damping off disease. Damping off is a horticultural disease caused by pathogenic microorganisms, will kill Cordyline fruticosa cutting before it has a chance to rooting. If temperature ranges are above the desired range, and humidity too low, when try to propagate Cordyline fruticosa cutting will wilt, rot and die. If fail to maintain ideal temperatures when propagate Cordyline fruticosa, they will remain green and healthy looking, but fail to create roots and eventually will die. For first 17 day I put my stem cutting at full shade location. By full shade I don't means full darkness, just less than 3 to 4 hours of filtered sunlight during the rest of the day. Too much bright sunlight may cause overheating to the cutting. Too bright sunlight also may cause overheating by raising the air temperature in the polypropagator propagators and humidity dome, both of which can dry out or damage the stem cutting. Also, too little sunlight will make the cutting difficult to do photosynthesis process. Cutting that have difficulty in photosynthesis process will make cutting harder to produce root. Too little sunlight also encourages the development of disease in cutting stem. My minimum temperature when growing Cordyline fruticosa is 22 degrees Celsius. Raining in progress. My maximum temperature when growing Cordyline fruticosa is 31 degrees Celsius. I grow my Cordyline fruticosa in tropical climate. I only water my Cordyline fruticosa plant when the topsoil is dry. For my climate, it is about every other day. Watering time for my Cordyline fruticosa is between 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. If raining, I do not water my plant. When watering Cordyline fruticosa, just don't let soil become too soggy or waterlogged. It's easier to overwater than underwater. On average, my water usage is about 400 milliliters. Your water usage may be different than mine, and depending on your conditions, you may have to water as often as twice a day. Water usage depends on container size, container type, weather and climate you live in. Ideal soil pH for growing Cordyline fruticosa is lightly acidic to neutral, a good range is 6 to 7 pH. Cordyline fruticosa grows best in fertile loamy soils. Cordyline fruticosa grows best in tropical climate. Cordyline fruticosa lifespan in my climate is perennial. Cordyline fruticosa native to Colombia. On average, Cordyline fruticosa height is between 1.5 to 2.5 meters. Cordyline fruticosa can be grown in full sun or partial shade location. Common names for Cordyline fruticosa, including tea plant, palm lily, cabbage palm, and good luck plant. Cordyline fruticosa are from Asparagaceae family. On average, my Cordyline fruticosa is about 2 meter. Cordyline fruticosa usually grown as ornamental plants. Cordyline fruticosa can also be grown as houseplants. I fertilize my Cordyline fruticosa once per month. Raining ongoing. I fertilize my Cordyline fruticosa in the morning. I use multi-purpose liquid fertilizer. You can use any fertilizer that's available to your convenience. Please read instructions carefully before start using any fertilizer. I start using fertilizer at day 30. I don't encounter any pest when growing Cordyline fruticosa. But looks out for aphids, scale, spider mites, and mealybugs. I usually don't encounter any diseases when growing Cordyline fruticosa. Except for this time. Other diseases you may encounter when try to growing Cordyline fruticosa: Fusarium stem spot, Fusarium leaf spot, root rot, Philosticta leaf spot, and Phytophthora leaf spot. According to the American Society for the Prevention Cruelty to Animals, Cordyline fruticosa plant is toxic to cats and dogs. Its toxic principle is saponins, which cause symptoms, including excessive drooling, bloody vomiting, dilated pupils, depression, diarrhea, and anorexia. If you suspect your pet may have ingested a potentially toxic substance, please call your local animal poison control center. From my experience, Cordyline fruticosa is the easiest and fastest plant to propagate. Growing Cordyline fruticosa also almost maintenance-free. Suggestion: how about you guys give a try to grow Cordyline fruticosa today? Thank you for watching.